Okay, I think we're good to go. So, want to thank everybody for joining us today, and let me clear that. Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for being here. This is our 2023 annual Ohio Hemlock Woolly Adelgid Task Force meeting. So for any folks that don't know me, I'm Tom Macy. I'm the Forest Health Program Manager with the OhioDNR Division of Forestry. Work in our central office in Columbus. Um, and just a little bit of background on this group. If any folks, if this is their first meeting of the group, or just to refresh folks on it. We had the very first meeting in this group back in 2013. And the purpose really was to kind of just bring together partners within the state that are interested in HWA, hemlock woolly adelgid, and hemlock conservation, just to get together and collaborate on things and meet at least annually, just to share how things are going, what folks are seeing, what's working well, what's not. Um, and the group currently is about 90 people. And seems to be growing all the time. As HWA becomes more established and widespread in the state, and other hemlock pest concerns show up, the group seems to be growing. So that's always great to see that. Our last meeting was also a virtual meeting that was in February of 2022. But we've had this meeting at a whole bunch of places in the past. We've had it here in Columbus. We've done it at Hocking Hills State Park. We've done it at Mohican State Park before. So hopefully we can get back to in-person meetings at some point. But I know a lot of folks in this group did get together not too long ago, back in the spring, for some hemlock treatment workshops that we had. So thanks to everyone that was involved with those. And then we will have some opportunities coming up, one of which we'll hear about in the second talk today, where I think a lot of us might be interested in getting together for an event coming up related to hemlock in Ohio. So for this meeting, we decided to do just a virtual meeting where folks can share updates on what's going on. So real quickly, if anyone's not really familiar with using Microsoft Teams, if you do want to type questions into the chat for folks to see, right at the top in your top menu, there's a chat bubble button there. Feel free to type into there if you have questions. Go ahead and introduce yourself if you wouldn't mind in the chat, just your title and organization, because we unfortunately have too many people to do introductions here today, but that's a spot where you can kind of introduce yourself. And then I am recording the meeting, so we'll plan on sharing a link to that video recording after the meeting for folks that couldn't make it. And then if you're not talking in the meeting, if you wouldn't mind muting your mic, so there's a mic button at the top screen too. When you click that, you can turn your mic on and off that way. And then when you are talking as well, if you're able to turn your camera on, that's great, so folks can see you. And then again, I'm sharing the meeting agenda on the screen right now, but it was also included with the meeting invite, so hopefully folks have that. And then I'll be moderating the meeting. So if presenters reach the end of their time slot, I'll jump on and let them know their time's up. But just please try to keep an eye on the clock and be wrapping up once your time slot's up. So, and then we will have a 15-minute block at the end, right before our first break, and then we'll also have 25 minutes at the end of the meeting for Q&A and discussion. So please hold questions until those times. You can obviously type questions into the chat at any time, and folks can help answer questions there. And then for any speakers giving updates, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself when you start your update, that'd be good. All right. So with that, I think we'll just jump into the talks here. So the first talk is an update from us, ODNR Division of Forestry, and Michaela Height is gonna lead that presentation. So Michaela, if you want to pull your talk up, go right ahead.
Awesome. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, hi everyone. As Tom said, my name is Michaela Height, and I work for the Ohio Division of Forestry and lead our hemlock crew down in Hocking Hills. So this is kind of going to be our update, focusing on our work in the Hocking Hills and our kind of overall strategy. So here we've got just our overall distribution map of eastern hemlock in Ohio. And so as this is, I'm sure all of you are pretty familiar with this. So, just showing our largest concentrations in Hocking, Jackson, and Ashland counties, and the focus of hemlock really just being in the eastern half of Ohio. And here's the latest map on where HWA has been detected in Ohio. So, initially in the southeast edge of the state, and has been most recently detected in Ross County this year. And we do last year, I think, or maybe it was the year before now, that we shared we were seeing possibly our first signs of decline in hemlock trees from HWA down in southern Ohio. We haven't really been seeing it other than that area thus far, but we look forward to hearing from all of you if if you're seeing anything different in your areas as well. So this is, just referring to our Eastern Hemlock Conservation Plan. This plan was approved in 2017. It's our department plan for, the state of Ohio. And it applies to ODNR land. So this is what we're using as the Division of Forestry, carrying out our conservation efforts for hemlock on state lands. This plan included ranking all of our hemlock stands based on recreation and conservation values. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but that's a tool we're using to help guide our treatment efforts. So focusing in now on the Hocking Hills area where I'm working. So these are the results of this past winter's survey season for HWA. And as you can see, it's been, picking up in a lot more areas than we've seen in previous years. So it's not everywhere, but it's in a lot more places. And so, some of the more significant recent findings is we detected it in Rock House and in the Old Man's Cave area in Hocking Hills State Park. So those are some of the significant newer findings. It's been up on the northern section on this map, that's Cantwell Cliffs, and that's where it's been kind of the longest, and it's been pretty widespread in Cantwell for a few years, but it hasn't been really widespread in kind of the southern Hocking State Forest and State Park areas. But now we've kind of reached that point where it's popped up in too many places that we're kind of rethinking, taking a step back and thinking about, okay, so how are we approaching this moving forward, knowing that we've kind of reached a point where we're not necessarily going to be able to treat every area where we have detected HWA. So to move on from that and figure out, what our plan is, we're using our conservation plan that I already referred to and looking back at the prioritization of our hemlock stands. And so this map is showing those results. And that's what we're using to determine kind of our plan moving forward. So the red on this map is the highest priority hemlock stands. And so you can see that's Conkle's Hollow, Rock House, the whole Old Man's Cave, Cedar Falls area, and Ash Cave. Those really high visitor areas are some of those really high priority stands for us to conserve. And so then also the orange is the medium priority, yellow is a low priority. I don't know if you can read that, but that's what that map is showing. So using our, where we found HWA and thinking about our high priority areas, this is what we've come up with as moving forward. What do we think we can reasonably treat and continue to retreat? And so our idea is, we put our highest priority hemlock stands into these different treatment units. And we've got kind of 5 different units that we've put some different areas into. And the idea would be that we would be retreating the same trees on a 10-year basis. And we know that our hemlock treatments are estimated to last 5 to 7 years. So at a 10-year point, those would have theoretically worn off at that time. But there's no immediate need to retreat prior to knowing that our trees are reinfested or any sign of decline or anything like that. So right now, and again, we're just like starting this idea right now, that we're thinking our plan will be to retreat the same trees every 10 years. And within each of those units, we would be revisiting those units every 5 years. And in those intervals, it would either be treating the largest trees in that unit and treating whatever we can up to our per acre limit of our insecticide. And then the next time we would come back 5 years later, we would do a smaller subset of trees in that same area up to whatever our per acre limit would be. So for example, this year in this, like, I don't know, melon colored like unit, I guess, is Old Man's Cave to Cedar Falls over on the southeast, and then Whispering Cave and the Lodge are kind of on the west side of that upside down T shape. And that is where we're treating this year. And 5 years ago, the largest trees were treated in that area. So all trees 16 inches and larger in diameter were treated 5 years ago. And so now we're going in, and based on our inventory data, we could treat all the trees between 12 and 15 inches in diameter without exceeding our per acre limit. So that's what those numbers look like, at least for this treatment unit. So we're treating 12 to 15 inch diameter trees right now in that unit. And then 5 years from now, we would be returning and treating the 16 inches and up. So this is what we're looking at as our kind of long-term, what are we thinking we can continue to reasonably treat, on a 10-year basis kind of moving forward. So I hope that made sense, because it's kind of been a hard thing to explain at times, but yeah, that's what we're looking at. And so what our treatments are, we're using imidacloprid and we're using the soil drench and bark spray methods with the Benton and Coles optimized dosage rates. And then we're also doing our trunk injections, and that's 10% formulation as well. So we are using all three of those treatment methods throughout each unit. So since I know this group hasn't met since the beginning of last year, I wanted to include some of what we did last year as well as our progress this year. So for chemical treatments, last year we treated at Ash Cave and Conkle's Hollow in the Hocking State Forest headquarters. Those were our units around the Hocking Hills area at least. So, you know, we've over 1,400 trees at Ash Cave, and that was in a few different units, as you can see on that map on the left. And then the map on the right shows Conkle's Hollow and those Hocking State Forest headquarters units. And between those, it was, you know, like 1,800 trees. And on these maps, the different colors of the dots, so every dot is a treated tree, and the orange dots are injected trees. The yellow dots are soil drench treated trees, and the blue dots were treated with a bark spray. So these maps, you can see that we're using all three methods quite a bit throughout those areas. And in addition to those Hocking Hills areas, we also did treatments at Lake Catherine State Nature Preserve, Beaver Creek State Park, and Hamilton Hollow, which is also in Hocking Hills. So a total of 4,457 trees for last year is what we accomplished. And at those other locations outside of Hocking Hills, we were partnering with DNAP and some state park folks as well, helping us with some of those treatments. So then this year, like I said before, when I had that long-term plan map, so this is that Old Man's Cave, Cedar Falls, Whispering Cave area of Hocking Hills. And so this is where we're at right now, showing all of our treated trees from this summer. And so as of now, we've treated 3,860 trees, all within this unit. And as I was explaining before, we're currently treating the 12-inch to 15-inch diameter trees throughout this whole area, as the 16-inch and above have been treated back in 2018. So those would be retreated in 2028. So in terms of switching gears from chemical control to biocontrol, we did release last year the Laricobius beetles, both Laricobius nigrinus and Laricobius osakensis. And so Laricobius nigrinus were released both at Sand Run Metro Park and also at Lake Catherine. And then Laricobius osakensis, they were released at Canner's Cave in Jackson County in the fall of 2022 as well. So we haven't released any silverflies since spring of last year. And then in terms of monitoring for these biocontrols, my crew here at Hocking, we collected branches at Lake Catherine in March and April of this year, and we monitored for the Larry larvae and for any leuco flies that would emerge from those branches in these Larry leuco containers that are in that top picture. So those are set up with heavily infested HWA branches. So we collected branches where there were releases of the biocontrols, and then where we could find heavily infested branches where that would be more likely to have biocontrols on them. And then over the course of several weeks following those branch collections, those containers were checked for any of the biocontrols, and we did not detect any in those containers this year. So we're still not, we still haven't, we're doing monitoring, we're looking to see if these biocontrols are establishing. And so far we haven't been able to determine that. And, we're currently thinking it might be that in some of these areas where even though they are some of our most heavily infested areas in the state, the infestations aren't widespread and consistently a heavy HWA infestation over a large part of landscape. So we're thinking it might be due to kind of just the inconsistent patchiness of the heavy infestations, that it's not a widespread enough heavy infestation to support the biocontrols. So, that's just an idea of what might be explaining why we aren't recovering any. We did do a lot of beet sheeting to monitor for adult Larry beetles this year. And we did recover one suspect Laricobius osakensis that is likely to be a Laricobius osakensis, but we're still waiting for official lab results to confirm that. So we can't say for sure. But we did, that's the only one potential that we recovered this year. So that's where we're at with our biocontrols at this point. So in terms of outreach, we did put on a couple of treatment workshops that I'm sure many of you may have been involved with or possibly attended. But we did one in Hocking Hills and one up in the Cleveland area. And so those were back in April. We had about 50 people attend both of those. And the target audience was pesticide applicators, arborists, consulting foresters, landowners, people, just natural resource professionals, or people interested in learning about HWA treatment. And so those went really well. They had, PowerPoint presentations for the first part, and then field demonstrations of treatment methods. So other outreach we also did last year, we did a training at Lake Catherine with the DNAP staff there. So we've done some smaller field trainings last year, but this year we did those bigger workshops that we actually, advertised to the public for others to attend. And then this is a new document that our team and Tom helped put together. And so this is a fact sheet that overviews hemlock treatments for landowners. So we haven't really had a front and back 1-page handout for landowners on how to treat hemlocks. So this is a new resource that we have available. And with that, I think that's it. This is a picture from our crew from this year. So yeah, we've had a great summer season full of treating hemlocks all throughout the busy hiking trails. So yeah, thanks for your time.
Excellent. Thank you, Michaela. There might have been a couple questions coming in the chat, so feel free to check that out if you want, Michaela, and address those. So, and also if folks want to ask questions coming up in that Q&A session at 2:15, you can do that as well. So our next presentation is about an upcoming workshop, and you'll hear all about that from Joseph Campbell. So Joe, if you want to share any slides, or feel free to take it away.
All right. Thanks, Tom, and thank you all. It's an honor to be on this. I really appreciate the work that Michaela, what you were just sharing. I'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to be doing in December in terms of spotlighting work to conserve the eastern hemlock. But a little bit of background. So I work at Ohio State in our School of Environment and Natural Resources. I know a lot of the folks on the call already through that experience, but I'm based in Columbus at our Columbus campus. I teach courses related to natural resource management, but a big part of my job is hosting monthly environmental professionals network events. We were created about 11 years ago by, at that time, a retired ODNR chief from the Division of Surface Water, who was seeking to kind of fill some gaps that existed between what researchers were doing in academic institutions, what state agencies were doing, what different NGOs, nonprofits, private business were doing in terms of improving the environment in Ohio. So over the last 11 years, we've reached about 6,000 different individuals through our programs. Each year, we generally bring about 2,000 different individuals either onto campus physically for our events or through virtual participation. And we do, a monthly series. So I'm going to drop into the chat a hyperlink to an event that we haven't promoted yet. It's a pretty rudimentary program site. We're building some graphics and other things that will make it a little more marketable, featuring some hemlocks. And what we're trying to do is connect different environmental professionals who may not know about HWA, may not be totally aware of these tree species and what they mean to our ecosystems, and bring that out to a wide audience. EPN seeks to connect, grow, and inspire environmental professionals. So Chief Balzer reached out about, it might have been a year ago, talking about HWA and the need for kind of more public forums to be bringing it up, especially in the eastern half of Ohio. And it resonated with me. So I see Danny and Jason are on the call now. You know that my grandmother has a tree farm in Hocking County, not far in Good Hope Township, not far from Cantwell Cliffs. And we have a few hemlocks, native hemlocks that we hadn't planted that are really special to me and to our family. So when Chief Balzer mentioned the interest in maybe us hosting an EPN on this particular tree, I got very excited, and members of our team, you might know some of the forestry faculty here in our school who have worked on this, and Kathy in extension. So we have a lot of good advocates in forestry out there in our school. So it's an exciting opportunity for us. So if you've had a chance to go to that website, it may be easier for you just to look at that on your own device than me sharing my screen. But Tom, if you think it makes more sense for me to screen share, I can do that too. So either way, I'm pretty bad at event titles. So I picked, I guess, what might be the corniest name that I could come up with of Hemlocked In. Because we'll have speakers representing Cleveland down to the Hocking Hills talking about hemlock conservation. So that explains the title. Our event will be in the evening. Normally we do breakfast events, but at the end of every semester, we try to do an evening program that generally attracts a bigger audience. Students will be presenting prior to this event. So it's a good way to bring graduating seniors into the program and graduate students. So as you scroll down, you'll see a little bit of background information that we put together. Again, it's a very general audience who will be reaching with this event. So we're trying to take some of the more scientific work and management work that I know many of you are doing and advancing, and make it digestible. And we generally talk about an audience of folks that might have a high school education or a bachelor's degree. That's kind of the level of expertise that we're talking to here. And you'll recognize, I think, probably all the names that are listed here of speakers. So Chief Balzer will provide an opening alongside the director. I don't know if you know Tim Hobb. He was recently appointed to serve as the interim director of our school. His background is in environmental economics. He's done a lot of work valuing natural resources from an economics perspective. So I think he and Chief Balzer will give a nice introduction to the topic area. And then at 6:10, we'll have a series of talks, starting with Tom to kind of overview, I think, the work that this team is doing and many others. I think Constance is actually on the call right now. I saw her name. So thank you so much, Constance, for being part of this program to speak from Cleveland Metro Park's perspective. Dr. Andreas, maybe some of you know her. That was a terrific conversation. She's just, I think, such a leader for many of us, and she's doing a lot of her own private individual work to treat HWA. Derek Cooper, who I don't know if is on this call right now, but will also be speaking to implementation. So the program's about an hour and a half in length. Would be great to have a variety of experts and folks on this call to be with us that evening. It's essentially a celebration of the Eastern hemlock, why it's so valuable. As I've been saying, we're trying to reach a wide audience. I think a lot of people, I've been kind of running this program by people in my life who aren't natural resource managers. They do totally different things related to the environment, but when they go to recreate, when they go to hike, they find places, whether they like it or not, that have the Eastern hemlock. They're looking for that topography and the cliffs and the caves that are some of the most valuable tourism places in Ohio for hiking and recreation. I'm finding that this event is really capturing their imagination. So that's what we're looking to do. And we'll have a more complete program page, but registration is open now if you're interested to sign up. And maybe, Tom, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, that's great, Joe. I appreciate that intro and kind of advertisement for that. It sounds like it's going to be a really neat event, I think, just to highlight all the great work being done to save hemlock in Ohio. So thank you and your team for having the interest in it and hosting us.
Thanks, Tom. And one last thing I should mention is I've communicated with Chief Balzer, and I think you, Tom, through emails, about maybe developing like a slide of appreciation or a way of acknowledging. We're featuring 4 voices on this, but we know that there's dozens, hundreds more people working on HWA. So we want to acknowledge that. This is a community program. So at any point, please reach out to me. I'll put my email contact here in Teams and this chat here. Reach out to me. We want to create kind of it's probably Hall of Fame is not the right word for it, but like an appreciation graphic to recognize people doing this work. So reach out to me. My colleague Kalia Tejas does a lot of the kind of back end work for EPN. So undoubtedly you'll be getting messages from us in the months ahead, but just a heads up, and thanks again for the work you do.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Joe. Appreciate it. All right. Keeping a little ahead of schedule here, which is just fine. We're going to move to an update from ODNR Division of Natural Areas and Preserves. So I believe we've got Matthew Smith. I'm not sure if Ryan Moss is on with him or not. And then they'll be giving an update, I think mainly from some Eastern Ohio preserves and areas. And then Coleman Mini will follow up with some updates from Lake Catherine State Nature Preserve. So Matthew, go for it.
Hello, everybody. Excuse me. If you don't know me, my name is Matthew Smith. I'm with ODNR Division of Natural Areas and Preserves in the Scenic Rivers program. I'm the Scenic River Manager for the Eastern region. And Ryan Moss, who works for me, is not able to be here today, but we'll trudge on without him. So Ryan and I, we were out. We actually found HWA on one of our conservation easements on the Little Beaver Creek State Wild and Scenic River a couple years ago. And so Michaela and Tom, we had them up, and we were really gracious for all the help we've got from them and kind of guiding us on what to do. We've since found that in Sheepskin Hollow State Nature Preserve. And then also, obviously, Michaela already said they've been working in Beaver Creek State Park, but also the Columbiana County Park District has a large park called Hellbender Bluff Park. And not only is that park completely open to wildlife with the cooperation with the Division of Wildlife, but DNAP has several hundred acres of the property under conservation easement. And so we have a vested interest in trying to maintain the hemlocks in that park. So when we found this this infestation on our properties and places where we had conservation easements. Ryan and I talked to our chief, Jeff Johnson, about this, and the chief has allowed us to expend some of our funds. He's given us funds from DNAP's I can't remember if it's checkoff or the general revenue fund, but anyways, he's allowed us to spend funds on equipment and pesticide to treat both in Sheepskin State Nature Preserve, Sheepskin Hollow, but also Hellbender Bluff and our conservation easement. So that's been really great that he's allowed us to do that. Now, one thing that has been, well, a disappointing thing, the Columbiana County Park District tried to pass a levy this year, and one of the things they were going to spend money on was treating the hemlocks. Well, their levy failed. Well, in the meantime, the county commissioners, they put a pitch to them about how important these trees are to the park and all the people that come there. So the county commissioners actually gave $2,000 to purchase pesticide for treating and plugs to treat these trees on Hellbender Bluff. So Ryan and I have been using those funds to treat Hellbender Bluff, in addition to the funds we've already spent using DNAP funds. So we've been making some progress and plugging away at it, because this is not our full-time job. It's you know, we have all kinds of other things that we do with the Scenic Rivers program. So we've been plugging away, and I guess I could probably, I don't have a slide presentation prepared here, but I can kind of share my screen, and there we go. Kind of show the areas. This is in Sheepskin Hollow. These are areas of hemlocks that we've treated here. And then I'll go over to Hellbender Bluff. And these are areas that we've treated, the outlines here. And the yellow are where we've found hemlock. So we still need to get to this. These are all hemlock stands. If you can see, we still have a lot of places to get to. That we have all these. We did find some over here, so we need to treat these. We haven't got to the steep cliff over here. So anyways, we're slowly working our way around and pecking away at it.
Awesome. That's great, Matthew. I appreciate it. If you're all wrapped up, we'll move on to Coleman then.
Yep.
Okay, let's see if I can get this. Okay. Okay, everyone. I'm Coleman Minnie. I'm a preserve manager at Lake Catherine State Nature Preserve. So what we have here is a map of the preserve in orange, and the hemlock layer within the preserve is in green. We have about 300 acres of hemlock in the preserve, and the entire preserve is about 2,000 acres. The initial infestation was discovered in 2015 in that black box area. That area was treated in 2019. And so jump ahead to December 2021. We did HWA surveys with forestry and found HWA pretty much throughout the preserve. Though many of the occurrences were low-level infestations, there was a drastic increase. So in the wake of that, forestry came up with a treatment plan for the preserve, targeting the highest priority areas. Here's a map of the proposed treatment area broken into sections. And State Forestry came out in August 2022 to kickstart the effort. and train DNAP staff on the methods. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with the treatments. Here's someone taking DBH. This is the basal spray method. Here's the soil drench. And this is us doing trunk injections. So at the end of those 4 days, we had treated 364 trees across 3 sections covering 35 acres. Afterwards, in the fall and winter, myself, Matt Jaffe, and Logan Camp finished up those 3 sections, which were mostly trunk injections. So sections E, F, and G are complete, and we'll be starting a new section in the fall. And as was previously mentioned, forestry has released biocontrols, silverflies and Laricobius beetles here in the preserve, but follow-up surveys for them have been unsuccessful. And then the other issue we have here with the hemlocks is the Rosalinea needle blight, which has caused substantial damage to a lot of trees. And it's not uncommon to see large areas where the lower branches of every hemlock are completely defoliated. Okay, that's all I got.
All right. Thanks a lot, Coleman. Appreciate that update. So, let's see. So up next, we have Ann Gilmore, who is going to provide an update on some of the Northeast Ohio GLRI project hemlock work that's going on. So thanks, Ann, for being here.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. My name is Ann Gilmore, and I'm the Northeast Ohio Restoration Manager for the Nature Conservancy. And Derek is on vacation today, so just providing a quick update on how things are going with our current grant. I don't have a presentation, so I'll just list out some updates. As of July 17th of this year, we treated 127 acres of hemlock for elongate scale and woolly adelgid, and our partners have contributed an additional 393 acres. Our partners on this include Holden, Lake Metro Parks, Cleveland Metro Parks, Geauga Park District, Division of Forestry, Western Reserve Land Conservancy, LEAP, Bio, and then also Lorain County Metro Parks provided a lot of survey acres through volunteer work. We've surveyed over 3,000 acres in Northeast Ohio, so we've met that deliverable, and our project is ending next May, so May 2024. Currently, Derek is scheduling his final treatment at the end of the summer and into the fall, and we have Cleveland Metro Parks and Lake Metro Parks treating another, I think, combined 45 acres up here. Follow-up surveys this winter will monitor the success where applicable and survey new location where pests were not previously noted. Our scale treatments are showing some success, but with some recolonization, indicating that the treatment has been successful, but not super long-lived and will require successive treatments. Other successes noted, we're raising awareness and getting new reports of new infestations, which is good to some extent. And then also, as mentioned, leveraging our partnership, our relationship with Division of Forestry to help with the biocontrol released at San Run. And today, I think we've engaged in about 6 outreach events to educate partners and others on hemlock issues up in Northeast Ohio. And then, as many of you know, and I'm happy to put this information in the chat, but Derek will be we're hosting a meeting for Northeast Ohio partners Wednesday, November 1st from 10 to 12, and that's going to be at North Chagrin Nature Center. And then in general, I think as this grant is wrapping up, we're looking to understand kind of what's our next steps up here in Northeast Ohio, what makes sense in terms of grant dollars to address this problem. And so I'm excited to be here today to learn about what everyone's working on and maybe foster some more partnerships. And I think there's a lot of need for work on private land. But yeah, we're just still trying to figure out what the next steps for our work up here will look like. So thanks, everybody. That's kind of all I have. Chugging along, almost done.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ann. I appreciate it. Okay, so the last talk before kind of the Q&A discussion section and the break is going to be from Josh Phillips from Cleveland Metro Parks. So Josh, if you're ready, feel free to take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Let's see here. Can we see that?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Josh Phillips. I'm Natural Resource Area Manager of the East portion in Cleveland Metro Parks, and going to be talking to you about what we have going on with our hemlocks. So we don't have an extensive amount of hemlock hardwood forest in the Metro Parks. Mostly it's just in our eastern reservations. But in those reservations, it is a significant component of our total ecosystem. So mostly today, we're going to be talking about North Chagrin. That's where we've had most of our issues with hemlock pests. You all are probably pretty familiar, I'm sure, with hemlock woolly adelgid. We're actually a little bit more concerned at this point with elongate hemlock scale. It's slower to reproduce, but we have quite a bit of it here in North Chagrin, and it's starting to spread into our other reservations. But I guess the silver lining is we have not had any mortality yet in any of our hemlock stands. Elongate hemlock scale, we first found it in 2018, and kind of since then we've found it more and more consistently. And hemlock woolly adelgid we first found last year, also in North Chagrin. So we've been doing volunteer-led surveys since about 2015 here. We've kind of ramped that up as we've realized that we have more of an issue. And we followed that up by doing more of an intensive inventory in the winter of 2020-21. So we actually inventoried 336 acre blocks that year. And you can see that in the majority of those acre plots, we weren't seeing a lot of elongate hemlock scale. We were seeing low levels of it for the most part, but there was some areas that were what we would classify as moderate or severe. So that was concerning. This is just a breakdown on our 5-tiered classification of our severity of our pest infestation. And then again, in 2022, we first found hemlock woolly adelgid, and actually in 2023, we found it right in here as well. So now we have 2 areas that we're actively treating for HWA. Trying to kind of prioritize, similar to what the state has done, we have a natural resource value index to kind of identify those highest quality natural resource areas within our reservations. So those being the dark blue on this area. And we overlaid that with the pest severity from our hemlock inventory to kind of identify those areas where we most wanted to target treatment. So right here was one of those areas, an area we call Whispering Woods. And then as Ann was just talking about, we partnered with the Nature Conservancy to do some treatment. And then following up on that, we wanted to do some effectiveness monitoring to see how effective, how long were our treatments lasting, and what our retreatment intervals might need to be. So in total, we started off with treating 420 trees in 21, and then we followed up that and are actively still treating trees. Derek and his crew are going to be back out in September. And then here on the right is just one of our treatment areas. And you can see, we're revisiting acre blocks. We're doing both basal bark applications and trunk injections using dinoteffurin. So following up on that with the treatment effectiveness monitoring, we took a small subset of those trees that were treated in 21. It was 64 total in our sample size. So 50 of those were treated with basal bark application, and then 14 with a trunk injection. And fortunately, with the scale insects, they kind of linger on the older growth. Even if they're dead, they're still present. So there's no way to actively know if your treatment has worked until the next growing season. So here you see a photo in the spring, and then coming back later in the year with the new growth. You can see that the older scale are still on that branch, but on all that new growth, there was no active recolonization. So this was in the first year after those treatments. And then following up this spring, we did another round of effectiveness monitoring, and we found that, you know, the severity had gone slightly up. Basically, the 1 is a very low, so we're seeing just above a very low level of scale on our trees currently, compared to a moderate to severe level beforehand. And then breaking down the treatment type, there really wasn't much of a difference between a basal bark application or an injection. They were both effective. So I think that's all I have.
That's really great. Thanks a lot, Josh. It's cool to see the effectiveness assessments there that show that the treatments are working. So that's always nice to see when you're doing a lot of investment into treating trees. And we didn't mention that in ours either, but we are starting to do more assessments of our treated trees too, to make sure they're being effective as well. So yeah, we've got basically a Q&A section now on the agenda. So do folks have any questions for any of the presenters from the first part of the meeting today? Feel free to jump on your mic or camera, or raise your hand, or type it into the chat, whatever works for you. Any questions folks have?
This is Rob Curtis. I just had, I'm wondering if anyone has, we've had some concerns with potential collateral damage from some of the treatments. Has anyone been doing any monitoring of invertebrates in or around the treatment areas or within streams adjacent, using any of our Ohio stream protocols or anything for invertebrates? Just kind of curious on that note, if anyone's doing any of that type of monitoring.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not aware of any stream monitoring that's happening around these areas. There's been some recent work on that in states other than Ohio that I've seen, but I'm not aware of any happening around these areas here in Ohio. I also do know of a Ohio University study that's kind of looking at imidacloprid levels in the soil and leaf litter around some of our treatment areas in the Hocking Hills. But I think it's still, I don't know what their findings are. I think they're still kind of mid-study with that and don't have any results or anything. And I think they were going to try to look at potential impacts to like salamanders or amphibians. But yeah, don't know where that study is at currently. Does anyone else have any knowledge of any non-target monitoring going on with hemlock treatments in Ohio? And then I see Connie's question there. Can we elaborate on the effectiveness monitoring that we're doing? Yeah, Michaela, do you want to jump on and kind of describe a little bit about our efficacy assessment sampling that we've been doing?
Yeah, so basically we just started this last year, so we are just in the beginning kind of collecting some results from that as well. And so it's just been selecting a few trees in a treatment area and doing counts on branches of HWA. And, you know, it's kind of challenging. It ended up being a lot more challenging than we thought when we came up with this protocol. And then you go in the field and it's very hard to find a tree that has 4 branches that you can actually reach and like find a delegate on. So, but that was kind of our goal, was to choose a tree that we're going to treat and that has a delegate, and counting up to 100 adelgid per tree. And so if it was 4 branches that you found HWA on, you would count up to 25 on that branch and then stop. If you only found 3 branches, we'd count up to 33 and then stop. So 100 adelgid would be like our maximum that we're counting. And then returning to that same tree 1 year and 2 years at least, we might do more than that post-treatment and counting those same branches. So we both flagged and with metal tags tagged those branches so that we are looking at the same branches year after year. And we also wrote down like the direction, like the azimuth, whatever, the like compass direction of that branch in case the tag or anything fell off. So that's what we're doing. We did collect data on our first like 1 year post treatment for 1 set of trees. But that's as far as we've gotten on that so far. And we did use both bark spray, soil drench, and trunk injection that we're monitoring. So that's what we're doing.
And yeah, and another challenge there is like, you know, having untreated control trees is important too, because there's a lot of other things that can influence the population of adelgid on a tree that isn't insecticide related, you know, winter temperatures, things like that. So it was a challenge because in a lot of places where we had HWA, we were treating all the infested trees. So we weren't like, you know, leaving infested trees untreated. But now we're getting to the point where, you know, we can't necessarily treat every single hemlock tree. So we are starting to have more opportunities to track untreated control trees, because that'll be good to compare, just to make sure it's not something like winter temperatures that's causing the population reduction. And hopefully at some point in the future, you know, it'll also become clear that the treated trees are just in general healthier than the non-treated trees. But right now, the best we can do is just counting adelgid woolly masses, because pretty much all the hemlocks we're treating are in pretty good health. So the tree health, I guess, metric right now is not real helpful. Any other questions out there? Comments? Ideas?
Hey Tom, this is Matthew. I
Hey,
know
Matthew.
this is something I kind of asked before. I don't know if there's been any progress for private landowners who could submit. You know, I think we talked about this before. Maybe EQIP or some type of reimbursement funding for managing their private forests. Has any work been, you know, accomplished on that, or any other type of progress on other ways for private landowners?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know the EQIP angle has come up, and I know other states are looking at this too. And I've spoken with Stephanie Downs, who's sort of our liaison to NRCS here within Division of Forestry, and we've started looking into that a little bit, but it sounds like it's for some reason it's very difficult to try to get HWA or other animal organisms or insects included as an EQIP treatment practice. So, we're still looking at that, but it sounds like it's going to be challenging and not something that we can quickly or get added to that soon, unfortunately.
Do they assist with spotted lanternfly? Do you know that or anything like that? Or
I don't think there's any spotted lanternfly treatments under EQIP that I'm aware of.
okay,
But we could, there's other potential ways to address that. Like Michaela and I attend I guess it's international because it includes Canada now, but a meeting of HWA managers, kind of like my counterpart in all the states that have HWA. And some states are doing some pretty neat programs where they're providing equipment or pesticides for landowners to do treatments on their land if they meet certain criteria, or potentially do some sort of a training to know how to do the treatment. So there might be potential, ways or programs that we can try to address that, or maybe something through soil and water conservation districts where they have the equipment and supplies needed to treat trees, and they can sort of loan that out to landowners to get treatments done on private land. So there might be ways to try to address that we haven't really done yet here in Ohio. But yeah, that's a good topic for continued discussion there.
thanks, Tom.
But I know one tricky thing too, at least with a lot of the grant funding we get for hemlock work, is that it's meant to be spent on sort of public land or protected conservation lands, just to focus that funding and not use it all for or a lot of it for a private landowner. So there are some strings attached to some of the funding we get, but I'm sure there's other sources of funding or ways we can be creative with it to try to address that.
Hey, Tom. So, since you brought up funding, I'm sort of curious what some additional state strategies might be. If you all might be trying to look into additional funding as a pass-through to other conservation partners in the state. Anne was just on talking about the status of the GLRI grant, which ends in May. And so much of the work that's being done up in Northeast Ohio, that funding dries up here. And so we're all needing to look for other creative opportunities. Any suggestions?
I mean, one that's coming up that we could look at is through the Forest Service, the Landscape Scale Restoration LSR grant. So that's a possibility. Yeah, and then I don't know about the possibility of looking at another GLRI grant possibly, but obviously that would apply just for the sort of the Great Lakes Basin. But those are two possibilities that just jump to my mind. But surely there's other grant potentials out there that could be explored. And yeah, it looks like Greg just shared the link for some more information on the Forest Service grants there. So yeah, we'll get some more information on this, and certainly can bring ideas to that November meeting that Derek's setting up, to think about how to keep funding going for hemlock work. All right, any other questions or discussion items right now? All right, well, we're definitely ahead of schedule. So why don't we do the break? And let's just reconvene at 2:30. And I'll check in with all the presenters for the afternoon to make sure they're good with that bumped up timeline. But yeah, let's plan on that. We'll do a break now and get back together at 2:30 and hear from a few more folks then. Cool. See you at 2:30. Our next presenter is Rachel Kapler with the Great Lakes Basin Forest Health Collaborative and Holden Forest and Gardens. So, Rachel, take it away.
Hold on here. I'm gonna change my mode here. I was trying to do the live thing. I don't like the live thing. Alrighty, so let me get it in presenter mode here. And I know a lot of you have heard of me. We're a relatively new collaborative that's Great Lakes Basin Forest Health Collaborative, and it's a GLRI-based initiative with the Forest Service and Holden being the main group running the show here with the collaborative. But with me coordinating everybody in order to work together on a particular problem, which is pest and disease resistance, and trying to get that bred into trees, and with our trees being ash, beech, and eastern hemlock. So with me being at Holden here, I got together some information not only about what the Great Lakes Basin Forest Health Collaborative has been up to, but also what Holden's been up to with the conservation team and their treatment for hemlock, and the research team and their new work on hemlock. So for the Great Lakes Basin Forest Health Collaborative, I'm working with people in the Midwest region, Great Lakes region, to collect eastern hemlock cones to make sure that we have seed collected and stored for conservation or research purposes at the National Seed Lab. You guys probably remember this from 2021. Here's our results from 2021. And it looks like this year, at least in our neck of the woods, we have good cone production. So we're planning on doing some collection of different trees in the area for this fall. And here's our updated picture of Ohio from the National Seed Lab and what they have from Ohio. They just usually take a small sub-sample of your sample. So if I'm thinking that maybe if we can get some more cones collected from one of the other larger populations of eastern hemlock, like at Mohican State Park, that would be good this year. But definitely no need to like recollect from the trees you already collected from to send to the National Seed Lab, more of a collect from new trees in order to help out with that. I can just reach out to me. I'll give you my information at the end for you to be involved with that and the details on that. For this year, the main thing with Eastern Hemlock and the Great Lakes Basin Forest Health Collaborative is our work with the Nature Conservancy's Trees in Peril group. And there we're working on, specifically with hemlock, trying to nail down a definition for lingering hemlock, those that would be more resistant to hemlock woolly adelgid, and to see where we can go with having more streamlined protocol for keeping track of the trees that are lingering hemlock. So in April 2023, some of you might have gone to the online version of our lingering hemlock workshop. If you didn't, we reviewed the past and future research that was going into HWA resistance in hemlock, and those recorded presentations are online. You can find them in a link under Eastern Hemlock at the GLBFHC's webpage there. And we have professionals who went to that meeting, help with editing the protocols that we put forward to them on how we would report, what reporting data we would want for lingering hemlock, what material would we want to have written down for the mortality surrounding those trees, and for our Great Lakes regions, what kind of surveying, plot surveying would we want to do on the long term before we even know which trees might have any sort of long-term resistance or longevity and survival, even though they're under attack. We'll have some field testing going on right now with those, and there might be some more potential edits later, but right now all those protocols are also on the webpage as well for the Great Lakes Basin Forest Health Collaborative. And so that's where we were and where we're at for that with the Forest Health Collaborative, for the management at Holden and our conservation team of mostly Chad and Becca, if you guys know them, with their helpers that are usually around to either assess the trees in the winter or apply for them in the summertime. We have Mel, our NowCore worker, who's made this lovely map for us, and we have the darker locations as a heat map showing where we have eastern hemlocks that have been treated for HWA, and they've been doing that since 2022, as most of you know. Our grand total right now is 2,780 trees treated. That should be all of them that we know of that have had it. Of course, that was over 3 years, so they went out and looked at them. They said those trees that got treated in 2020 or those that have had, it's been 3 years since their treatment, that they are in need of a new treatment. But because of our budgeting situation, it's probably going to be that they won't get treated again, and it'll be sort of on a 5-year rotation for reapplication of the treatment, which of course is basal bark spray of dintefron and imidacloprid. So on this spot, we have, on this map, we also have some green hash tagged areas, and that's eastern hemlock locations around our little mountain conservation area. And in order to help out with that and keep the infestation down in areas that we don't own, Becca has been working with the neighborhood in order to see if neighbors of our conservation area are willing to have us go in and survey their hemlock trees for HWA. So the picture here sort of is the same area, just zoomed out a little bit more, and we have the neighbors' parcels highlighted up as to whether or not they've gotten back with us on our proposition to have us come over and look for HWA on their hemlock trees. And in early 2023, they were able to start surveying those that were willing to have us on their property to do that, but we have not a plan yet for getting pesticide applications happening on that land. Currently, it will be up to the landowner to get them treated, but we will at least know exactly where it's at and how bad it is to see what we should do on our own property. But we are still in the process of trying to figure out where we can go with that and how we can help our neighbors. David Burke and our new hemlock-based researcher, Danny Lugo, is working on this project, which I probably brought up previously. So let me go over where we're at now. And all of these research points 1 through 5 are just what we want to make sure we can get done that will be helping build a better breeding program for resistant hemlock, kind of starting at the very beginning of everything, where you need to know that we can propagate these things well. We have good breeding populations. We can speed up the tree process and try to have them seed earlier. And of course, we need to quantitatively know just how resistant are they to the HWA that we would be putting on them. We have so far started our methods and plans for propagation research. So both with potted hemlocks and trees in the field, we'll be looking at how we can do early induced flowering on them with hormonal application. We'll start with some air layering. Here's a picture here of what the air layering looks like before we get it covered up to help the root growth. And so that's basically, if you haven't heard of that before, we take that piece of branch and we clear off the needles. We create a section that has no cambium layer, and we apply a little bit of rooting hormone so that the tip of that branch will hopefully create some roots within that ball of sphagnum moss and covered in plastic, so that we can just snip that right off the tree and it'll be a copy of that individual. And then we're also going to see if, besides cuttings, a lot of people do cuttings with eastern hemlock to get copies of them. We're going to work on best practices for that, but also if we can get any better success with hot callus grafting. So all those plans are in effect to start now until next year. We don't have any results yet, but we're getting some information from North Carolina State University's Ben Smith, who's been doing this previously with hemlock. And we have some cuttings that are being grown in raised beds that are tented. And we'll try to reproduce that within our greenhouse and keep track of what best specifications work well for that. And then for resistance testing with application of HWA onto individuals of known origin, with, we're trying to get better specifics on here, a picture of their rain down technique where branches with HWA are laid over the trees we want to have the HWA go onto, and so they rain down onto the trees. It makes it very difficult to have each individual under that table have the same number of HWA on it. So we're trying to figure out how we can make that happen so that we can make sure that the no significant differences that they found within their first experimental run of this is not something we can correct and make better. So at all of those, we're working a bit more on numbers 1 and 3 right now. Kind of started number 2, but we'll need a bit more different populations from different locations. So that's one thing where cone collection comes in handy. So some of those seeds we can be using at Holden to make some containerized breeding populations. And then we'll be, once we work out some logistics, we're hoping to get into more of the developing the quantitative bioassay, so that we know just what kind of resistance each individual has. And then finally, we have just a side note from those of you who might not have went to the Lingering Hemlock workshop this spring. We have Jill W. with her lab at University of Connecticut, and they are working on getting a complete genome written down for eastern hemlock. They said that that should be assembled by this next spring, and they've already started trying to get more information on the terpenoid profiling, with the terpenoids being their chemical that can be measured that is related to the amount of reaction they have to pests on them. And they're doing that in a couple of different ways, both between different individual trees to see if there's a difference, but also over time to see how the environment and the timing of things over the year annually might change that terpenoid profile. And because they'll have a Eastern Hemlock reference genome, they're also getting samples from Eastern Hemlock across its range so that they can compare the DNA genome of those to what they have from a tree from the Arnold Arboretum. So I just wanted to lay that out for you to show you that there's some other work going on. And so being able to collect cones and then maybe also collect some branch samples to send to them for sequencing might be helpful. If you're interested in that, you can also email me or you can email them directly. So I have everybody's emails up here if there's a certain part of it that you want to get a hold of somebody on things. So we're working with all these people here on our upcoming stuff, dealing with Eastern Hemlock.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Let me see if I can exit out here.
All right. And again, after the next few talks, we'll have a discussion session. So if you have questions, please hold those and we'll get them addressed then, or you can type them into the chat in the meantime. All right. So up next, we've got Rob Curtis with Summit County Metro Parks. Go ahead, Rob.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Tom. Again, Rob Curtis. I'm ecological supervisor for Summit Metro Parks in Akron, Summit County, Northeast Ohio. Just a little background on our program. Probably many of you are already familiar with it, but we have opted, or one of the, I think, few who have opted not to use the insecticides. So we have been working with Division of Forestry, who has graciously been providing us some biocontrol. We have a lot of loose stands of hemlock in the county, but we probably have about 4 or 5 good 10 to 30 acre hemlock forest valleys. Some are nested within Cuyahoga Valley National Park, but one is in Sand Run Metro Park, really right in the center of Akron. And that we found in 2021 that had been infested for quite a while before we had noticed it. So we estimate that was probably infested for maybe 10 years prior to that, right around 2010 or so. So anyway, the trees were relatively healthy. And we, with the Nature Conservancy that same year, kind of monitored a lot of Northeast Ohio, and I think they found a couple of other spots as well in Youngstown. But we had this pretty good infestation of about a 20 to 30 acre stand of hemlocks at Sand Run. We weren't going to treat, so I think we're sort of a nice test site for biocontrol without treatment. In 21, we started releasing, with of course the help of Tom and the division, silverflies and Laricobius, the nigrinus beetles. And then last year we got a few more. So in total, we've released about 600 silverflies and a little over 3,000 beetles. Last fall, we started monitoring, beat sheet monitoring in the fall. And then this spring, we worked with the same, as Michaela was describing earlier, we worked with the same containerized 6-week kind of monitoring of fly emergence and beetles from the spring material. So we put those in containers, and at Sand Run, we kept them within the same park and monitored 2 rounds through about mid-June. And we have not been able to find any. But again, those are probably because, we've got 30 acres and about, 3,000 animals. So trying to find a needle in a haystack. So hopefully those are doing well there, and we will be able to detect them in the future. But that's kind of just a synopsis of our program here. Anything I missed, Tom?
I don't think so. Not that I can think of.
Okay.
It's a good update. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on the list, we've got Joe Mosbrugger from Crane Hollow Preserve in Hocking County. Joe, it looks like, oh yeah, there you go, getting it switched up there.
All right, can you see me and hear me now?
Yep, I can see and hear you.
Wonderful. All right, I'll try and share and I'll try and start the presentation then. Are we all good?
Well, it's in like presenter mode, I think, where we can see the one slide and then the preview of the next slide.
Oh, that's interesting.
If you go up to display settings and you do swap, I think now we're good. Yep.
Thank you for the coaching there, sir. All righty. So yeah, as mentioned, my name's Joe. I'm the assistant preserve manager here at Crane Hollow Nature Preserve. I've been here since 12, I think, and hemlock woolly adelgid has been a big part of our lives here for the last several years. What is Crane Hollow? We're kind of a little odd in that we're a state dedicated nature preserve. So again, we are officially a DNAP preserve, but all our funding comes from in-house. So we've got just short of 2,000 acres. So that keeps us pretty busy with what we're trying to do here. And we do have a lot of hemlocks on our land. Kind of looking where we're at in the big picture of things, I like to call it right in the hemlock belt there. You can see that big blob of green. Crane Hollow's right in the center of it. We're just basically in between Rock House and Old Man's Cave, right next door to Conkle's Hollow. And then moving on, like I said, we do a lot with hemlock woolly adelgid, and what we've really been trying to do pretty religiously since 2014 with the help of staff and volunteers is we've really been trying to search for it. One thing we found that is really, really useful is to show our volunteers what it looks like. So we actually try and get voucher specimens. In the past, we actually had to sort of work a little harder to find them. Now, unfortunately, it's quite a bit easier to find the voucher specimens to show people. It is what it is. But what we try and do is we try and get our volunteers. We really try and do this systematically, seeing everything, and we really try and have them track in some sort of fashion just to keep track of where we're going exactly. We split into specific groups. If we do find it, we'll flag things. The first year we found it was way back in 2018. And then after that, we had some cold winters and it really kind of knocked stuff back. So it was fortunate. But then the last several years, I think in the winter of 2021, it really sort of exploded on us. And then just sort of updating what we did in 2022, because it's been a while. We actually had 15 days where we had people out here and we monitored over 300 acres. The one thing I'll sort of say is that I was getting a little nervous in a way because it seems like all our discoveries were either coming from me or our AmeriCorps worker so I was a little worried, but it seems like our volunteers are doing better and better with this. And it also is just a great PR move to get people out there involved in a beautiful place, seeing beautiful trees, helping us. It's really a good thing to do in the doldrums of winter because nothing beats a hemlock forest on a nice snowy day, as long as it doesn't make adelgid hard to find. But we get a lot of support and people really like doing this. We try and partner with other organizations. That's Katie Bennett with Clear Creek Metro Park. She kind of wanted to see what we were doing there. We've got AmeriCorps workers there too from other organizations helping us. We've really had a lot of help with this over the years, which I am very excited about. What we did in 2023, we didn't get quite as many acres done. That brown area, that's where we did our monitoring, and we did pretty darn well there. We got 280 acres. We try and usually go to areas where we didn't look the previous year. I was really pleasantly surprised it wasn't worse than it was this year. All the little white dots, I don't know if you can see them well enough on there, but those are kind of newly discovered infestations this year. In just about all the cases, I don't know if you can see my little mouse there, maybe you can, other than over there in Early Hollow and then down there in Young Hollow. Everything else was really pretty close to where we've already had an infestation. So I was really pretty positive. And again, even though we didn't have anything here on State Forest, just to the west there, there's been a known infestation there for many, many years. In all these cases, though, it seems like our infestations are still really light. A lot of times we're just seeing a single dot there. We haven't seen any decline. Again, probably the Rosalinea blight, that's kind of almost looks scarier. Again, we're not seeing a lot, but I can probably guarantee, I mean, I can't guarantee, but I'm pretty sure it's in just about all our hollows. So again, we might see nice, clean, just brown patches that look healthy there. There probably is something there, though. But things are light. We've kind of changed our treatment strategy a little bit. We weren't preemptively treating trees. Again, we're kind of a smaller organization. We don't have as much as many things to oversee as the state. So we didn't preemptively treat. We just sort of focused right when we saw it. We'd try and sort of put it out there. And we were using a lot of Cortec tablets to begin with. We kind of were following what the Smokies were doing. It seemed nice and safe and easy to use. We liked the higher per acre limit. In some of our really dense areas, though, and close to streams, we did do a fair amount of stream injections, though, as well. Then in 2022, with getting information from you folks, we've really moved to more of the liquid treatment there. We kind of like the speed of it. Again, who doesn't like a cheaper price? And just following the higher efficacy according to some of the experts. And that's something I just appreciate any more knowledge on who's really seeing what's working, what's not working. But you can see we only treated 4 trees with tablets that next year. And it was really just sort of a trial to say, hey, this is how you do it, just to show some people, yeah, this is what happens. And we treated just about under 19 acres last year. Kind of looking to what we did in this year. And I'm just going to point out that beautiful hemlock right there. That's a 44-incher there. Pretty proud of that guy. But you can see that we've this year we've done, again, primarily the liquid. We are still using the Cortec tablets a little bit. I found it's kind of nice that you can just stow some of these with you. And when you're way, way, way back there, it's kind of nice to say, oh, let's just sort of, we got some more per acre limit here. They're nice and light. So we kind of hang on to them for some of the really, really far back areas. It seems like where we have used Cortec tablets, it seems like our trees are doing really well. So that's good, but I'm trying to also use the Cortec tablets in kind of moister areas, not as many xeric areas. This year, we've kind of done a lot of work kind of in more xeric areas. So we really haven't had to do that many stem injections because of stream. Pretty much everything has been kind of more basswood related, I'd say. But the other thing we've sort of, because we've been a lot more in some of these xeric rockier areas, we've had to do a lot more basal spraying as opposed to the soil drench. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're retreating a lot of areas that we kind of treated earlier but reached our per acre limit. And so we're making bigger buffer zones. So we're kind of, again, a lot of these trees, we don't even think the trees might have it, but we are starting to be a little more preemptive as well, following the lead of some of the state forest folks there. Just finally, I'll just sort of say a little thank you slide here is that we've received help from so many folks. We've gotten student groups from OU and Hocking College, had a good group from Hocking this year. We've got a really nice group of volunteers, specifically 2 groups. We get a lot of folks from OCBN, and then there's a hiking group called Feet on Fire. They come out here all the time. Thanks to the ODNR staff. I like to bug Tom and Michaela about things, and Levi even helped us one day. So with that, I'll say adieu.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks a lot, Joe. Cool. So our final talk today is going to be Christina Slover with Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District. And Christina said the storms knocked her internet out, so she's just on the phone, but I have her slides that I can share. So Christina, are you with us on the phone?
I am.
Okay, cool. Let me go ahead and share this. All right. Hopefully folks are seeing your slides. So let me know, Christina, if you want me to advance the slides, and I'll do that.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Christina Slover. I work as the Natural Resources Technician and Wildlife Specialist for Monroe Soil and Water Conservation District. Next slide. Monroe County, this is just an idea of where we're located in Ohio. Next slide. And we've been working closely with the hemlocks in Pyatt Park. State Service Forester Paige Rice, who I believe was on this call, she first identified HWA presence in Pyatt Park in 2020. And the park is operated by Monroe County Park District. So we, along with Division of Forestry, as well as the Park District and Extension, were able to get together in August of 2021 and do an HWA treatment training. And there were Parks District employees that were present during that training, and we were able to treat some trees during that training. Next slide. Okay. And so since then, our most recent survey for HWA in Pyatt Park, we just conducted this past April. And interestingly, and I'll show a map, we found the adelgid in areas where it had previously not been, but we were not able to find the adelgid in areas that it had been identified in 2021. And so the new areas where we found it were actually on the other side of the ravine. The picture there, it shows some of the adelgid that we were able to find. And from the looks of things, everywhere where we were finding adelgid, it was more low infection. Next slide. So for the most recent survey, this is just a map of where the hemlocks, they're in that light green, are located within Pyatt Park. And so we had broken up the different areas of hemlocks into different survey locations. And during the survey, we had some people from Parks District come out this time. Extension was there, Division of Forestry, as well as we had folks from the Marietta Wayne National Office as well. Next slide. Okay, so this one looks like it's kind of hard to see, but in 2023, you can see the dots are in red where we were finding adelgid on hemlock trees, and then that is in comparison to where we had found adelgid in 2021. That side of the ravine, it was much drier than the side that we were finding the adelgid. And so we had just talked about the differences in the dryness level, and maybe that's why we were not finding it where we had found it in 2021. Next slide. So for Monroe County in general, in 2022, we had sent out a HWA identification card and flyers to all of the landowners on our forestry mailing list, because there are other areas where you find hemlocks in Monroe County other than Pyatt Park. And then anytime I'm out on forestry CAUV inspections and I know the landowner has hemlocks, we speak about HWA identification and treatment. And then Paige, our service forester, has identified hemlock woolly adelgid on a hemlock. It's actually in someone's yard. And then she had mentioned that there may be a possible positive ID on Wayne National, We're not quite sure. We think it's close to Monroe County, but we're not quite sure if it's actually Washington County. So that is kind of where we're at this point. And that is all I have.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for that, Christina.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that concludes all the scheduled report outs for the meeting. So basically now we've just got kind of more Q&A discussion. If folks have anything to bring up or questions to discuss. Meeting scheduled until 4. If there's not enough to take up that time, we can certainly conclude early. But yeah, does anyone have any questions for the last 4 presenters that we heard here since the break? Well, there was something I was gonna share. If I can pull this up.
We've also got a question in the chat. Well, Joe's asking about papers related to the efficacy of different treatment methods.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Well, that's the question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there's anything out there, because I just want to be doing, again, efficacy, both like kind of with Rob was saying, if there's any adverse side effects, but also what's really doing the best job of getting these things, and does something last longer, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. There definitely are studies looking at that, and we can help round those up. I think the most recent studies that I'm aware of are from Deb McCullough at Michigan State University, and I think she was looking at one of the more recently developed treatment options is that bark spray, with basically what you would apply as a soil drench, but applying it as a bark spray. I think that might be one that has the least amount of research behind it, but so what I've seen from Michigan State is really promising, and they have I think equally as effective results from that as the soil drench. So that was good to see that. But yeah, there's definitely older studies out there on a lot of those treatments too. But yeah, we can definitely try and round those up and share those out.
Do you guys prefer like doing a basil spray as opposed to soil drench? Because I like the soil drench better, because it just seems like the sprayer like will get a little tiny bit of dust in there, and then it doesn't spray as well. So I just kind of like to get it straight to the roots, but unless like it's just too rocky. But I was just curious what you guys found.
Yeah, I think we're in a similar boat. Michaela, do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, definitely agree. The soil drench method is preferred between the two. But we have found sprayers that worked better in the last couple years than in previous years, but there's still more, potential issues with them getting clogged, and yeah. So definitely prefer soil drench. On the same page as you, Joe.
Well, I was trying to find a photo, and Michaela, maybe you have it. I don't know why I can't find it now. But I think Coleman is off the meeting now. But Coleman Minnie from Lake Catherine State Nature Preserve sent us some really interesting photos of something he was seeing on some of the hemlocks there. They were right along the shoreline of the lake at the nature preserve, and was wondering if anyone else was seeing something similar to this. And for some reason, I can't find the photo now that he sent of that.
I can pull it up,
Okay, sure.
but I do see, I think Coleman is still on the meeting. as
Oh, is he?
well, But
Oh, okay.
I can, pull up. the photo.
Yeah, and do you have the farther back one of like the trees along the edge?
One sec.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, this is really interesting. He's kind of seeing, and Coleman, sorry, I didn't realize you were still on there. If you want to describe any more of it, but just like kind of this webbing, that when I first saw the photos, I was like, is that fall webworm caterpillars doing that? But he's not seeing anything as far as caterpillars or anything within that, and it seems like the webbing is a little more wispy than you'd see with fall webworm. So I'm not sure. We might try to follow up and take a closer look, but my best guess right now is maybe an outbreak of mites, like spider mites, because they can produce some webbing like that. But I don't think I've ever seen a mite outbreak this heavy on a hemlock tree before. So if anyone has ideas on that or sees anything like that, let us know. And then I guess I'm also curious, is anyone, I know there's some areas of northeastern Ohio that have uh, discoloration and maybe some decline happening from elongate hemlock scale, but is anyone anywhere in the state seeing hemlock decline from HWA or any other major issues? Just trying to see if folks are seeing impacts to hemlock from some type of pest currently. I mean, we do a lot of surveys in the Hocking Hills and different DNR properties, but we don't get out everywhere where hemlock is. So just curious if folks are seeing impacts from HWA or any other pests in their area. And I see Levi's question there. Any more info on Rosalinea? We're now seeing the death of saplings and conkles. Yeah, it's interesting. I've brought that up a lot with kind of my counterparts in other states, and I haven't gotten a lot of strong response of people seeing the same thing with Rosalinea that we are. So I don't know if they're just missing it or it really is, just something where that's happening kind of in southeastern Ohio right now. But I personally haven't noticed it as much this past year, 2023, as I have maybe the last couple of years before that. But maybe it's just because where it occurred, all the foliage was killed and kind of ran its course, and it's not able to persist there anymore. But is anyone else seeing a lot of Rosalinea impacts continuing this season?
Tom, I can't tell for sure if it's still active because there's no foliage left low enough to see
Yeah.
basically anywhere in the gorge. But we do now have lots of saplings with no foliage left on them at all.
Yeah, and
In areas where you've gone in that they had it bad, but not seeing it now, are they refoliating?
That's a great question. And actually, so I think we were at Lake Catherine, I want to say last fall. I forget the exact time we were there. I could go back and check, but I'm pretty sure I actually was seeing some branches that were hammered by Rosalinea the year before, that there were buds breaking with new growth on them. So I thought that was interesting that maybe these branches aren't completely dead and they will be able to, produce new foliage on them. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else is looking that closely or really tracking that. That was just kind of a one-off observation I had on some of the areas that were pretty hard hit.
Well, I guess that's hopeful. There's very, very little new growth at Conkles
Okay.
in the trees that have been hit by Rosalinda the last couple of years.
Yeah. And then I see the question from Joe, was that tree ever treated? So at Lake Catherine, yeah. That's what I'm curious about too. And I don't know if Coleman knows for sure or not. I think he mentioned some of the trees he was seeing that on might have been treated, but he said, yeah, the section was treated. Some were, but not sure. Affected branches span hundreds of feet. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe there's some interaction with the imidacloprid treatments and resulting mite outbreaks there. And then Joe mentions doesn't feel Rosalinea is as bad at Crane Hollow this year. Trees that have been hit still don't look good. Yeah. Yeah, and Kristen is looking at Fibrella. Kristen, do you want to introduce yourself or say anything further on that?
Hi. Yeah, I've just been looking for it ever since Tim Toman and you kind of mentioned it to me since it is a pathogen. And I recently have been traveling a lot and have seen it in West Virginia where I'm located. And we took out some branches back to and actually got the fruiting bodies to come out of the needles. And then I was in Washington, D.C., which I know is the opposite direction from Ohio, but we were there yesterday and I saw the classic yellowing of the full branch yesterday in the canopies of hemlocks as well there. So it's kind of a, if you have a tree that has HWA, elongated hemlock scale, and Fibrella, it can look really bad with that kind of discoloration and then the yellowing. But the Fibrella sticks out a lot when it has a large section of the branch is full of yellow needles and includes up to 3 years. So it's not just the shedding of the needles that are 3 years old that we would expect around this time of year. Also, it's last year's needles and 2 years ago needles.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, so Fibrella needle blight is a different fungal disease from Rosalinea, but just seems to cause yellowing and needle loss. And typically that yellowing is right around this time of year, August, September, when that happens. So another one to be on the lookout for. And we'd be interested if folks are seeing that. Like Kristen mentioned, just whole branches that just turn yellow right around this time of year and needles start to drop. So be good to,
and I'm not
at the very least, just track where we're seeing it.
Yeah, this is just let's see if we need to pay attention to this thing. It might not be a catastrophic event, so don't be scared on this big call.
And Jason mentions thinks he's seeing Fibrella in northeastern Ohio. Okay, yeah, that's good to know. Jason, if you have any particular spots in mind where you can recall seeing that, feel free to send those over and we can follow up and maybe collect some samples just for our knowledge of tracking where it's occurring and just kind of have it on our radar if it does seem to be on the rise and becoming a big problem in certain areas. Yeah, if any folks are seeing that and have specific points where we could find it, feel free to send those over. Yeah, it looks like several people are seeing that. All right, any other points of discussion or questions that folks want to bring up?
I wanted to just mention that we are looking into at least doing a trial of this Rainbow's plugless injector system. You know, we've been using the arbor plugs and the syringes to do our trunk injections, and we think that's probably the easiest way to do that in the forest setting that, you know, we're covering in Hocking Hills. But I just wanted to mention that we're hoping to set up a day where we can try one out without actually purchasing one to see how it works for our hemlock treatment purposes. One of the like plugless systems. So if anyone is in the, I know Joe, you were interested in checking that out, but if there's anyone else in the area who would want to try and coordinate to see that, when we do that, feel free to let me know. I was also wondering if anybody has here has used any of those, but we haven't used any for hemlocks at this point, but want to try them out just to see if it could be another useful tool.
Yeah, when you're treating a lot of trees, those little plastic ports that you buy to put into the root flares and do the injections really add up. They're like 50 cents a piece. So when you're using thousands and thousands of them, it gets expensive. So there are some of these. Well, this one from Rainbow looks fairly portable, and you don't need those plastic plugs. It's a plugless system. So we're thinking of testing that out. They said they're willing to let us borrow one to see how well it works, and we'll report out and see how it does for us. But yeah, like Michaela said, if anyone has experience with that or other plugless systems, we'd be interested in talking with you about it. All right, well, if there's nothing else, hopefully next time we get together, we can be in person and get to see everybody and have a bit more side discussions and stuff on how things are going. But really appreciate everyone joining. And like I mentioned, we're recording this, so we'll send out the link to the recording shortly after the meeting once that's up. But yeah, I want to thank everyone for doing their reports on all the great work they're doing for hemlock conservation around the state, and keep in touch and hopefully hear from you soon. And we'll if we don't see you sooner, we'll see you at this meeting sometime in 2024. So thank you, everybody. Take care.